now it's my great pleasure to introduce our first poet, who is Patty Wixon. Patty's most recent book of poems is Dear Spoon from Wellstone. Her new chapbook, The Great Hunt and Other Poems, is forthcoming this summer. Patty's delicious baked goods have sustained many a Rogue Valley poet, and Patty and her husband Vince hosted the William Stafford birthday celebration held at the Hannon Library at SOU for many years. And they also served as Jefferson Journal's poetry editors before Amy Miller took over. Patty?
Thank you, Kathy. I wanted to begin with a poem that I thought seemed appropriate for both community and about reading. On reading, war, and peace. The summer I was 16, the doctor said pleurisy, 2 months of bed rest, get yourself a long book, a classic. The first week I read Time about Claire Booth Lewis. I wanted my life like hers, important adventures, ambassador to Italy, ambassador to Brazil. I knew nothing of other countries. I opened War and Peace. Each summer morning, I rubbed on Johnson's baby oil, stretched out on my stomach atop the picnic table, the book in the shadow of my head. I shivered in snow and ice while my skin broiled. Afternoons on the porch, I sat against a pillar, but accompanied Natasha in drawing rooms in St. Petersburg. When I read her name, I said it slowly, Natasha. I tried renaming Penny, our dog, but she wouldn't come. I thought about Tolstoy's speech is silver, but silence is golden. Decided it meant think long before speaking. As weeks went by, I learned the power of silence. Guns not firing, floorboards upstairs not creaking, no sound in the room after he left and slammed the door. The next reader will be Dan Kaufman. Dan lives near Jacksonville. He's very active in the Rogue Valley poetry community, and his writing has appeared in print and online, and he has frequently recognized by the Oregon Poetry Association. Dan?
Thank you, Patty. It's an honor to be at a reading with you and Vince, as well as everybody else that's going to be reading tonight. Our theme is community, and it's a word that's linked with common, something shared. And while unfortunately many things still divide us, I think we all have a need to belong. And even when community is comprised of only two people, what affirms us is connection. So this poem is called Community at Slower Speed. Sunlight goes through the morning fog as I walk the rural road where our local marathon advances. The slender leaders aren't expected for a while. 6 yellow school buses seem to hover in the mist, here to ferry finished runners back to where they began. In high school, I ran distance, a white kid on a black track team. I wasn't fast, just dogged. That community's acceptance worth my aching legs. Once, I nearly finished third. Today, my neighborhood is pale, its shadows faint and indistinct. My hard-knock knees are overmiled, and I've become a walker. Breathing evenly, I find my stride and settle in. I pass the idling buses, the revving crowd. Across the road, a portly fellow walker in saggy sweats huffs toward me. Between us, the 2-lane glistens. I offer him a waist-high wave. Next year, I'm gonna run this, he pledges. Attaboy, I say. Our next reader is Marisa Peterson. Marisa's poetry captures vignettes of her life in other countries, happenings in her neighborhood, surprises in her unwieldy organic garden, and delight in playing Nani to her imaginative grandson. Her poetry has been published in Timberline Review, the Jefferson Monthly, and several anthologies. It's my great pleasure to present Marisa Peterson.
Thanks, Dan. And like you, it's a pleasure to be here with this group of poets. Community is found, at least I find community in so many places. And one is the annual Peach Palooza that Perry and David puts on, except like many other things last year with pandemic, there was no Peach Palooza. I'm hoping for it this year. This is called Prized Fruit. In the midsummer pause between national conventions, people in our county forget about politics, adjust their priorities, and focus on peaches. The main orchard in the area advertises its annual bring your own bag or box 25 cents a pound sale. Folks from across the valley flock to this event. Grandmothers seasoned in the art of canning, younger women who prefer freezing, parents with young children whose soft cheeks mirror the skin of the delicate fruit. Strangers chat easily, swap recipes in English and Spanish as they inch around massive crates of peaches to select the very best ones. The Carpe Diem crowd favors cobblers, crisps, and homemade ice cream. Long-term strategists envision pantry shelves sagging with jars full of amber gems, chutney, and peach ginger jam. Or a freezer filled with succulent summer abundance destined for comfort food on gray winter days. No jostling, no arguing, no pundits, no partisans. Just a local convergence of corporate generosity and a community that appreciates a good deal, as well as the farm workers who tend the orchards and harvest the bounty. This goodwill feels contagious, like it could spread as easily as butter and peach jam on toast, like it could become an antidote to conflict, bigotry, and a host of isms, a remedy worthy of a Nobel Peace Prize. Well, it's my pleasure, my honor to introduce Vince Wicks, who is well known across the state. Vince's most recent book of poems is Laying by Flowstone Press. And he co-edited 4 of Oregon Poet Laureate William Stafford's books, including Sound of the Axe, Aphorisms and Poems. Vince?
Thank you, Marisa. I grew up in Minnesota and never got over it. Though I've lived 60 years or more in the West, I want to read my State of the Union. I'm going to read it with all of the changes that Dan and Kathy suggested I make at our poetry group a month ago. So they should be aware of that. My State of the Union. Except for bullhead fishing from the bank near an inlet, my parents seldom went near water in the land of 10,000 lakes. My mother was afraid, so I never learned to swim, and my father worked in the barn or fields. Until I saw a photo of my father as a young man in a swimming suit, striding from a lake, his strong chest and arms, pale, skinny legs, it hadn't occurred to me that he'd ever been swimming. I never saw him wear shorts. Always cold, even in summer, he wore long underwear. My mother was too warm, dual controls on their electric blanket. When I was a kid, we took 2 summer vacations when my folks had a hired man they could trust to milk the cows morning and evening, and not walk down the lane to the Legion Club in town, get drunk, spend the night in a ditch, and not make it back to the farm in his little room under the eaves. In our 49 Chevy, we drove to the Black Hills, got cold drinks at Wall Drug, wound through the Badlands, and witnessed the passion play and spearfish on a hot, humid night, lights illuminating a distant stage. On the viewing deck at Mount Rushmore, we put a dime into a telescope to see the presidents up close before a cover slid over the lens. The other trip to northern Minnesota, where we stepped across the Mississippi and saw giant statues of Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox outside towns claiming them. I think of that trip every time I watch Fargo. What else do I have to do when the country's opening up and I'm shutting down? The movie is set in winter and not in Fargo or North Dakota, but mainly in Brainerd, one of the Paul and Babe towns. Marge Gunderson puffs into the kitchen in her police parka, where her husband is tucking into hash browns in the breakfast nook before getting to work on his mallard painting. She says flatly, "Hun, Prowler needs a jump," a line fitting for my home state, in which few words are offered, mainly concerning vehicles and the weather. Now I reintroduce Kathy Pyle, who's going to read a poem. Kathy.
Thank you, Vince. This is a poem for librarians everywhere who are the community gardeners of our imaginations. It's called What Landed in Sheldon, Iowa. She spent Tuesdays on the library's purple Puff the Magic dragon rug. Her hair gelled into Seussian shapes, striped stockings, wild petticoats, rocking out to Randy Newman with the Wobblers. She adopted a glass display case and turned it into a bean nursery, so kids could watch the first leaves unfold and aspire upwards. Founder of Sip and Spell, she'd never met a tavern that wasn't ready for an educational experience. She once told me a story of launching a balloon with a girlhood plea for a pen pal. It flew 49.49 air miles south from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, across the state line. You can believe it happened to land in another girl's backyard. They wrote for years. And now back to Patty.
My next poem is going to be about insects and that are part of a community in different places in the world. Cockroaches. Right there on the table, a bowl of cockroaches. High protein appetizer prepared by our pharmacist. I couldn't bite into one to hear the crunch of the double fried body, Taiwanese style. The sound in Anchorage when a family from Costa Rica moved in next door and cockroaches came along in their couch, settled into cracks leading from their kitchen to ours. Hundreds of pale pebbles skittering through walls, seeking crumbs and heat, barely resembling their giant cousins, shiny chestnut brown. In Florida, the night when I turned on a light, startling one 2 inches long, rushing at me. I yanked up my nightgown for fear it'd get trapped, scurry up my legs instead of racing back underneath the floorboards. I hear that same scuttle of legs and wings in the college lab. My job tending gallon jars of them. Their chromosome chains so human-like, they are perfect for research. Twice a day, I held the gas nozzle under jar lids, reached in to refill vials of water before the huge bugs came to, clacking wings, swinging feelers, swinging around the glass, frantic to catch hold. Now in Taiwan, I look over other options, decide on a pill of ground cockroach, a cure for sick stomach or heart or liver, a pill without a sound or scent, just a swallow and it's gone. My final poem is called The Great Hunt, and it's about an ancient community. And this takes place in Utah. The Great Hunt. We drove down steep dips in the 35 miles, and if the river's not running deep and turbulent, We can make it to the panel in 9 Mile Canyon. Its sheer vertical rock shines with brown black varnish, desert bacteria covering rock cell by cell for thousands of years, reflecting sun moving up cliffs of crumbling petrified dunes, slabs of red rock and white rimmed sandstone piled like mounds of graying snow. The hunt shows a late fall mating season, a gathering of rams and ewes and lambs, each carefully chiseled to tell the story in sharp-edged shapes. The sheep all face north from where winter will come. Tan figures hold bows, arrows poised to fly. One, perhaps the leader, stands twice larger than the others and wears 2 feathers on his head. I count 35 sheep with a hunting sprint among them. Excuse me. I count 35 sheep with a hunting spirit among them. His headdress horns bigger than any ram's. His shoulders like wings connected to a small torso. How patient the artist must have been chipping each figure alive on this rock. Wind skirts the petroglyph, preserving the great hunt. A whoosh and aspen tops, then it's gone, leaving deep silence behind. Dan?
Thank you, Patty. This is called Community, though there are limits. This isn't a poem about immigration or assimilation, though I'm a California transplant, an invasive species. It is about donations after disaster, supporting shelters, food banks, local schools, rolling up your sleeve at the blood drive, an attitude of after you. Community also means a mom who shows her son how to write a condolence note, a dad expressing to his daughter why she should reach out to a new kid in class. Community means voting, tipping, picking up that litter on the lake trail. My definition even extends to earthworms I displace while digging weeds. I help these low lives rejoin their soiled neighborhood. And yet, despite admiration for their vigor, I evict the dandelions, warning these intruders to stay the hell out of my lawn. And I'll close my portion of the reading with this. Music can reinforce community. And in this poem, it also connects generations. This is called Orange Blossom Special. My college roommate weaves us through Saturday traffic east on LA's 105. Lake blue eyes and burnished skin, Tim is Irish Puerto Rican. He plays the banjo, plans to be a musicologist. Sliding an 8-track into the Fairlanes player, Tim drums the wheel to Orange Blossom Special, a bluegrass fiddle tune named for the train that carried New Yorkers to Miami till the 50s. I asked Tim why he's drawn to bluegrass. Bluegrass, klezmer, zydeco, music's one community, he says. The roots, they intertwine. Today, Diego, Tim's 8-year-old cousin, competes in a fiddle contest in Linwood, their hometown. This used to all be orange groves, Tim gestures on the off-ramp, his sweeping arm, the blinker synced. 2 ceiling fans stir heavy air inside the old community center. Diego sits quietly on stage, cradling his fiddle. He brightens at Tim's wave. 6 boys and girls take their turns with a community band, sawing their way through Will the Circle Be Unbroken. Diego earns a 3rd place ribbon. Mi hombre, Tim shouts. Diego grins and pumps his fist. The young musicians gather center stage for a finale, the challenging Orange Blossom Special. Once they're rolling, breathless, breakless, bows careening, it's the sweetest train wreck ever heard. Marisa.
This is entitled The Post Office for zip code 97501. You can tell a lot about a town by what goes on at the post office. If customers carp about the long line that snakes out the building onto the sidewalk, or check their watch every 20 seconds as if they're missing something important, they may indeed miss something. Like the old cowboy in faded flannel shirt and Levi's, who finally gets up to the counter, sees a set of keys left by the previous customer, abandons his place, and runs to deliver the keys to a very pregnant woman wobbling out to her car. The other customers do not advance. The clerk does not call next. Instead, the line suddenly shapeshifts to barricade the door and protects the displays of greeting cards and packing materials from a whirlwind toddler broken free from her mother, who needs 6 more arms to manage both the tot, as well as all her packages and shipping forms. The customers smile, shoo the giggling child back to her mother once, twice, 3 times, while waiting for the cowboy to return to his place at the counter. In the parking lot, someone spies a red leather glove on the pavement, picks it up, places it on a post at the corner of the building. The glove will be there when its owner returns. We live right in the heart of East Medford, but there's a wild creek that goes to the back of our property, and there are trees that line the creek as well as the neighborhood. The neighborhood is full of wonderful and exotic trees, from sequoia to Japanese larch and black lace. What is the word in English? Anyway, mimosas. And this is bird sanctuary here at our place. This poem is entitled Easter Service in Lockdown. No cars head to church today. Churches are shuttered. No cars head anywhere. No noise in our neighborhood, but many sounds. The rustle of Japanese maple leaves in the morning breeze, whir of the hummingbird in our honeysuckle vine, buzz of bees in the rhododendron. A choir of warblers practices in the Clara story of the willows along our creek. I'm not sure which denomination they represent, but they chirp sweet canticles until the resident crow assumes his pulpit on a branch in the neighbor's sequoia and begins to preach a sermon. The little birds are in no mood for a raspy lecture, so they increase their volume and continue to pour out their praise for this sun-splashed spring day. Hallelujah. Vince?
Thank you, Marisa. Baseball has occupied much of my time and attention. And Minnesota, I'm back in Minnesota again, is noted for town ball, amateurs playing other town teams on the weekends. Town ball. High school and college summers, center field was my domain. Playing next to men in their 30s and 40s who farmed, ran the elevator, sold seed corn, worked construction. They focused on swinging for the fences, not running down fly balls on sticky August Southwest Minnesota Sunday afternoons in wool uniforms with engineers stitched onto the front. Anything you can get to, Willie, they called from right and left field as I crouched staring into home ready to get a jump. Engineers, because in its salad days, Tracy was a railroad center. Laura Ingalls Wilder waited in the depot for the train to South Dakota. You could look it up. Those days are long gone, the depot gone, Roundhouse 2, and the 2 hotels where railroad men put up. Those who wore striped bib overalls and caps and played cards and drank 3-2 beer in my uncle's pool hall. One night before my time, a few players got drunk after a game and commandeered an engine down the line as far as Garvin before coming to their senses. How many times after games had I heard that story in bars where Murley, the town's best player ever, bought me 10 high sours. Carp, Big Daddy, Sam, Kurt, Pussarm, Hoss, Billy, Flamethrower, Bo, Lefty, Flatty, Harmboji. I played with them. Then it was over. My education in dugouts and in cars riding to unkempt ballparks with smart, funny, vulgar men who returned to work on Monday, and I left for another kind of learning. To finish up my part, a little poem called Thirst. It's dark as I stand at the kitchen sink, filling a glass with my finger crooked over the edge. I'm thirsty after dreams of the desert, sand endless and blowing into new dunes and across the railroad tracks, like the ones Lawrence blew up in the movie. I saw him crouching at some distance, both hands on the plunger. It's a long time till dawn with its rosy fingers and dim responsibilities, the first one being brushing my teeth. Someone may want to kiss me. Kathy.
Thank you, Vince. In March 2020, I became a member of a new community, the COVID unemployed. A number of Americans who were unemployed due to COVID was estimated conservatively to be 10.1 million, but it's actually probably closer to 20 million. This is called the Upside Down Church. The online job loss therapists ask us to consider what's great about having our steeples planted in the ground. What holds you up when things turn upside down? She shows us a photo, a house of worship perfectly posed on its steeple. Really a sculpture tilted on a neatly mowed lawn somewhere in Canada. Seeking new perspectives, I imagine lofty congregations hanging like bats from upstairs, where a choir should be singing. I picture we jobless enjoying gravity-defying views as we relax with morning coffee, because who needs to get to work anymore? We might catch sunlight suddenly beaming across a landscape of sadness, something the gainfully employed would miss. And I wonder how churchgoers could pray as they watched upstairs for sneak attacks from enemies, like ancient Armenians who worshiped on the second floor. It was life or death in those stony houses of God, never mind unemployment checks and Zoom interviews. And I remember a little girl who stood on her head, legs steepled against the couch, poised for adventure in a universe visible only to her, as she joyfully spacewalked upside down on the living room's blank popcorn ceiling. And this last poem is called Tiny Town. And I want to say thanks to Vince, Dan, and Amy out there for helping me focus it. It's a new poem. Tiny Town. 1. First 17, then 34 little houses and a white painted fence. Wedged between water treatment plant and industrial park. Away from drugs by the creek, from life among the blackberries. 2. That's my 8x10 safe place. You can lock the door, be alone with your thoughts, You gotta do your gate watch, do your chores. A table, a bed, a toilet. Red doors, a tiny front window, a chair on the porch. It's peaceful. Keep it nice. Learn how to garden, grow strawberries, cabbages. I finally lifted my head up. 3, we measure self-sufficiency. What are their barriers to change? We all have our own. Do they have documents for daily life? Official identity with photo, license, then money in the bank. Many already work. The rent goes up as they grow. We're not warehousing people. We make them feel safe so they can take the next steps. 4, but you have to take the steps yourself. We care about each other. We support each other. We eat together. It's a community that bonds fast. 5, over half move on to a permanent place. Thank you very much.
So I'd like to open it up for questions if you have anything for the poets or for any other reason. If you want to unmute yourself, and I think you can just go ahead and jump in.
That was a very nice reading. I appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
This is my first time here this evening, and I really enjoyed everyone very, very much.
Thank you.
Yes, I just wanted to say it's good to see old friends again over here over the mountain in Ecotopia. How do you keep your inspiration going during these quiet times?
Hi, Jackie. Good to see you. Well, there's baseball.
Well, I have 3 cats running around that I watch. They definitely spur my imagination.
Thank you.
And our formal front room was a virtual 5th grade classroom, 3 days a week. Our grandson was here, and we have those unruly gardens. And I was as busy observing the world and waking up in awe every morning, looking out my window to see what was happening in the rose garden. So inspiration is every place.
I had a question. I wondered if any of the, or how many or any of the poems were written specifically for this reading. They sound, all of them sound so appropriate to the theme in so many different ways. I really appreciated the variety, and I appreciated the humor of many of the poems in these difficult times. I thought that was a really a nice touch.
Yeah.
I confess specifically that I wrote Tiny Town for this reading.
For
So
me,
thanks for your help.
For me, the second one that I read, Community, but There Are Limits, was written specifically for this reading.
Well, Steve, you know, none of mine were written for this reading. You've seen them before.
I had seen a number of them before, but a number of them I hadn't. So
Good.
I wondered where they came from. I was really impressed, actually, that because that's a difficulty for me to write on demand on a particular theme. So I really admire those of you that did that and did it in such original ways.
Well, I was definitely not writing on demand. I went through the pages of a manuscript for a new book and just selected a few, and then got it down, finally got it down to 3. I'm really glad that, or I should be really glad that you didn't have to listen to all of them in the new book.
You see how deftly she got a plug in there?
Yeah. Well, I know you two both very well, and I didn't even know there was a new book coming out until I saw it online. So I think she was actually too shy about it for too long.
Well, we're Kathy's cousins. So we're here for the first time for an event like this. And it was really enjoyable, really enjoyable. I find poetry in my garden all the time.
Thanks, Jan.
Yes, nice to see you, Jan.
What kind of fertilizer do you use in your garden?
Compost. We have a big composting.
I was curious if is the Jacksonville Library or some of the other libraries going to do more on different themes going forward?
That sounds wonderful to me. Let's keep it going. I think it's a great idea. And you know, if you all are willing to head over to Jacksonville, hopefully we can actually do this in person and have it be an even richer experience. I think that'd be great. Maybe you'll join us next time, Steve.
Okay, I'm ready.
Anything else?
I wonder if you could talk about, anybody could talk about the idea of community. And, you know, I think it's kind of a tricky subject, actually. Did anybody have trouble finding poems about it? Or, I mean, does anybody kind of not write about community? And so you have to write something new about it? I'm curious.
I found that almost anything fits.
I kind of had the same experience going back through previous poems. I found many of them at least tangentially focused on community of some sort.
I wanted to include a poem about the library because the library has really meant community to me as I grew up, became a great reader and then a writer. And the librarians that I've met along the way have certainly been great inspiration.
Hey, libraries.
I included my poem about cockroaches, which I thought, well, a lot of people might think that has nothing to do with community, but really all of us have an involvement with insects in some way all over the world. So I decided, okay, why not just read about cockroaches?
They have those all over the world.
Well, I think if we're too specific, like thinking community, like the neighborhood or whatever, that could be limiting. But for me, my backyard has all these communities of plants and birds. And some days I feel like we have a wildlife refugee here. About a week ago, I looked out and I thought, what is that? Is that a rat? And I kept looking at this pudgy little thing wandering across the yard. It was a baby possum. We've also had a snake one time. We used to have lots of raccoons. There was a mountain lion one night that jumped out of the tree in the neighbor's yard and across the creek. And of course deer all the time. And then there was the wild turkey one morning walking across the top of just along the roof line. I caught something in my peripheral vision. So community. I mean, I think if you're open, there's community every place, including with cockroaches. So.
All right. Well, I just really want to thank everyone for coming. Thank you to all the poets. Thank you for everyone. And if you haven't put your email in the chat, if you'd like to receive the poetry resources, we'll go ahead and send that to you, or you can always find me at the Jacksonville Library if you'd like some of that too. So thank you everyone for showing up, and we'll hopefully see you all next time.